author said, Fasl, section. ومن معاصي العين النظر إلى النساء الأجنبيات بشهوة إلى الوجه والكفين. And amongst the sins of the eye is looking at the strange women. That means the marriageable women, not the related women. With desire at the face and hands. Looking at their faces and hands with desire. But looking at their faces and hands without desire is not haram. That's why he said, بِشَهْوَةٍ إِلَى الْوَجْهِ وَالْكَفَّيْنِ, with desire at the face and the hands. وَإِلَى غَيْرِهِمَا مُطْلَقًا, and at other than those two, other than the face and the hands, absolutely. Meaning with or without desire. With desire at the face and the hands, and at other than those two, other than the face and the hands, absolutely, meaning with or without desire. وَكَذَا نَظَرُهُنَّ إِلَيْهِمْ إِنْ كَانَ إِلَى مَا بَيْنَ السُّرَّةِ وَالرُّكْبَةِ. And likewise, they're looking, the women's looking at them, at the men, if that were at what is between the navel and the knee. وَكَذَا نَظَرُهُنَّ, and likewise they're looking, here hunna, their nazar, that's for women though. وَكَذَا نَظَرُهُنَّ إِلَيْهِمْ, at them, that's for men. So, and likewise, the women's looking at the men. إِنْ كَانَ, if that were, إِلَى مَا بَيْنَ السُّرَّةِ وَالرُّكْبَةِ, at what's between the navel and the knee. وَنَظَرُ الْعَوْرَاتِ, and also a sin of the eye is looking at the private parts. وَيَحْرُمُ عَلَى الرَّجُلِ وَالْمَرْأَةِ كَشْفُ السَّوْأَتَيْنِ فِي الْخَلْوَةِ لِغَيْرِ حَاجَةٍ. And forbidden for the man and the woman is exposing the private parts in privacy without need, without a need. So here, in privacy, that's Shafi'i school. Without a need means for the least need. For the least need. Doesn't have to be an emergency. Even cooling off or changing clothes. Question: is it sinful to look at a woman's clothes with desire? Her clothing. So, perhaps I can help you here. Are you asking me if it's haram to look at her clothing with desire? Or are you asking me if it's haram to admire the shape of her body through her clothing? Yeah, that's haram.
Sheikh, I have a question.
Go ahead.
Question is, you go to have a doctor visit, and there's only a female doctor, at the office. There's no man there or no woman. She's the only one that could be in that office at that time. You have to undress in front of her and let her see your aura. What about that situation? Is it haram or is it a need?
there's not an emergency, then that's haram. If there's not an emergency, darura. Now that has to be for more than a need.
Okay, the need is
A need
like,
is an errand. Like, for example, a checkup, that's a need. That's an errand. Meaning something you want to do. A checkup is not a darura. That's not an emergency.
a need as in what I'm trying to think what they call that when a man had to get a prostate exam.
Uh, so it depends on if it's a need or not. It may be this he needs the same thing, but for two different people has two different judgments. Because now you're talking about a medical issue. If there's no need, yani if there's no darura, sorry, if there's no emergency, he or she cannot expose the nakedness to the doctor. A checkup is not an excuse. Even to the same gender, yani, not even that's not restricted to the opposite gender. وحل مع المحرمية أو الجنسية نظر ما عدا ما بين السرة والركبة, and legal with the related women, the relative women, his relatives, his kin, or with the same gender and legal with the same gender, is looking at ma'ada, everything other than ma bayna surrati war rukbah, what's between the navel and the knee. So with your non-marriageable woman, you cannot see what's between the navel and the knee. You can see other than that. And with the same gender, you cannot see what's between the navel and the knee. You can see other than that. At Shafi'i school, some imams said covering the private parts only. According to some imams, like Malik for example, if someone just wore only brief underwear, that's sufficient. But that's not valid for Shafi'i school. That's not sufficient for Shafi'i school. And, when it comes to the related women, the non-Muslims did reverse of this judgment in a lot of cases, which is that they accepted for the related woman to expose some of what's between her navel and her knees, and they didn't accept for her to expose her chest. So if she exposed her chest, it would be horrendous. But if she exposed something between her navel and her knees, it would be no problem. إذا كان بغير شهوة, that's if it were without desire. Seeing that related woman, any of her body or all of her body but what's between her navel and her knees, and seeing that one of the same gender, all of the body but what's between the navel and the knees, that's permissible without desire. Without desire. Question, so for the woman it includes the chest. You mean being able to expose that in front of the related man? Yes. She could expose her chest in front of her male relative. Not the cousin, though. Male relative, we're talking father, brother, son, uncle, nephew. Those ones, not the cousin. Female relative, we're talking about mother, sister, daughter, aunt, and niece, not the cousin. Not the uncle's wife, also. Not the wife's aunt. And of course, not her sister. ويحرم النظر بالاستحقار إلى المسلم. And forbidden is looking with contempt at a Muslim. It's like you're looking at him like he's nothing. وَالنَّظَرُ فِي بَيْتِ الْغَيْرِ بِغَيْرِ إِذْنِهِ. And looking in another's house without his permission. Like being a peeping Tom, looking through a hole or in the window. That's a sin of the eye. This harms him because one may see what he doesn't want that one to see, including his women, his wife, his daughters, etc. أو شيء أخفاه كذلك. Or looking at something that someone hid also. Something that he hid. And then you went to get it out, and then you looked in there. Now, I don't have some examples, so you might want to ask me about looking in someone's cell phone and that type of thing. Let me review that case. Wallahu alam, that's the end of that section. You said somebody you cannot marry can look at you in those places that you mentioned. So, if it's a man, anyone can see all of his body except what's between his navel and his knees. A man can, a woman can, related or not. If it's a woman, then her relative can see all of her body except what's between her navel and her knees. And another woman, Muslim woman with Muslim woman, they can see all of each other's bodies except what's between the navel and the knees. A woman with a marriageable man, he cannot see any of her body except her face and her hands. Without desire. Unless they're married. If they are married, then they can see all of each other's bodies. Or also, if that's a case of a master with his slave woman, is like a man with his wife.